Hello and welcome to this guide on Portuguese greetings. My name is Alicia and I am really glad that you want to learn more Portuguese to communicate with the natives. We'll start with a short introduction. You will learn in this guide for English speakers the most common greetings in Portuguese, the most common farewell expressions in Portuguese, ways to ask how are you in Portuguese, and some slang for these situations. So it's really complete. You may already know some expressions to greet in Portuguese, but now you're going to learn all of them, okay? And I'm talking about Brazilian Portuguese, okay? Because what you learn here can be used to communicate with people in other Portuguese speaking countries, but I speak Brazilian Portuguese and this is what I teach, okay? So don't worry, what you learn here is useful for communication in Portuguese generally, but the slang that we are going to see is Brazilian slang. Okay, so if you do not have any knowledge of the Portuguese language, you can start with this video, okay? And even if you do speak some Portuguese, you can watch it too because you're going to learn a lot of useful information. Because you're learning how to break the ice in Portuguese. When you ask someone, how are you doing? You're starting a conversation. So it's really important to know many different ways of greeting and saying goodbye and asking how are you in Portuguese. This Portuguese guide includes informal expressions indicated with an asterisk and colloquial and slang expressions that are indicated with two asterisks that are very common in everyday Brazilian Portuguese. You may not want to learn these informal and slang expressions, but you should know them because you should recognize if someone is using slang to speak with you, okay? You may not feel comfortable using slang in a foreign language, that it's very normal, but people in Brazil, we are very, very informal, very casual, which is why the expressions that you learn in a Portuguese course, in a normal textbook, they are used in Brazil, but we have many other ways of saying goodbye and saying many expressions that are useful for daily life. So even though this video will be long, you'll learn things that are really useful if you talk to Brazilians, okay? But don't worry because anything that you will learn here can be used in your daily life and none of these expressions can be considered offensive. Okay? Some expressions do not have an exact equivalent in English, but the material still includes a vocabulary list with the translations. You also have a cheat sheet, exercises with answers, MP3 and other free materials to practice. Okay? So, if you are ready, we can start with the greetings in Portuguese. Os cumprimentos. And you may know all of this, so let's see them. Oi is hello in Brazil. Olá is also hello. You can use it in Brazil, but it's more common in Portugal. You can say bom dia to say good morning, and also you will use bom dia during the day. After lunch, you will switch to boa tarde because it's the afternoon, à tarde. And after dark, you will say boa noite, okay, which means good evening and good night. But you already know that, I think. So here you have the expressions and the translations. You can pause the video if you want to take your time to process all this information. And if you want to keep on learning, let's begin together. As despedidas. How can you say goodbye in Portuguese? You can say tchau. Tchau, like oi, is informal. You can use it, there's no problem, but it's a little more informal than, for instance, saying até já. Okay? Até já is very standard Portuguese. And when you say até já, you are supposing that you're going to see the person shortly. Até já, até breve, the same thing. I'll see you later, but later in a not very long time, maybe a couple of hours. Até breve. And you may also want to say até logo. Até logo is see you later. So you're not specifying when is this going to be. Okay? And to any expression in Portuguese that begins with até, até has the meaning of until, well, you can react by saying shortly até. Okay? So if someone tells you até logo, you can repeat até logo, or you may say até breve. It's really okay. But if you want to say something short and sweet, you just react by saying até. Okay? So até já, até breve, até logo, até. It works fine. Okay? And after this, you're going to see até mais ver. Até mais ver is see you later. Okay? We'll see each other again, but we don't know exactly when. You can also say até mais. Is the same phrase but cut short. Okay? Até mais. And you may also want to say até outra. I see you another time, but you're not specifying when. And you will react, if you want, with até, short and sweet. And then you can say até a próxima. The meaning is see you next time. Okay? And also possible will be até amanhã. And this one is very specific. See you tomorrow. You may want to say até segunda. Segunda is Monday. So if you're saying goodbye to your work colleague on a Friday evening, you may want to say até segunda. See you on Monday. You can substitute segunda and use any other weekday that you prefer. Okay? Até segunda is a classic way of saying see you next week. And you can say até a semana que vem, which is very long and the meaning is see you next week. Okay? And até as a reaction will work in any of these cases. A gente se vê is a little informal, okay? Because we are using a gente. In Brazil, you use we, and we is nós. This is the official way of saying we. You and me, we in Portuguese, nós. But informally in Brazil, we use a gente instead of nós. It is very informal, but it's not wrong and it's not impolite. It's just informal Brazilian. So, a gente se vê, we will see each other. Any moment, we don't know exactly when. A gente se vê. And also you can say cuide-se. The meaning is take care. You may want to say fique bem. And when you say fique bem, you are saying stay well. You can say vá com cuidado. And the meaning is take care. And also possible, vá pela sombra. And the meaning is the same as vá com cuidado. So go, be careful. You can go, but be careful when you're going, okay? So it's a very Brazilian way of saying take care, okay? And you can say vá com Deus, okay? Deus is God, and you do not have to believe in God to use that kind of expression in Portuguese, okay? It's part of our, language, okay? So you don't need to believe or go to church or anything to say to someone, vá com Deus, okay? I'm giving you my blessing, so go with God. I hope that you have a great day. It's another way of saying that, okay? So if you're parting ways with someone, you just say, vá com Deus, you have my blessing, okay? And also, another way of phrasing it is, que Deus te acompanhe. The meaning is, may God be with you, okay? But as I told you, you do not have to believe in God to say that kind of things, okay? And it's not disrespectful regarding people that do believe in God or anything. Okay? Just a way of saying things. And you may want to say, tenha bom dia. You say that to wish someone to have a good day. Okay? Tenha bom dia. If you only say bom dia, you're saying good morning. Okay? But if you use the complete phrase here, tenha bom dia, you're wishing a pleasant day to the other person. And you can also say tenha lindo dia. Okay? Bom dia, a good day. Lindo dia, a beautiful day. You can say tenha uma boa semana. So I am wishing a good week. Tenha uma boa semana. Also possible, boa sexta-feira. Okay? We have already seen Monday, segunda. And now we are using sexta-feira. Okay? I'm wishing a good Friday. So, boa sexta-feira. Instead of sexta-feira, I can use another weekday if I want to. But normally, well, you wish someone to have a good Friday because Friday is a very happy day. Okay, so boa sexta-feira is very common. And you can also say vamos marcar as a way of saying goodbye. And when you say vamos marcar, you're literally saying let's get together, let's make an appointment, let's meet again to have dinner or to have a coffee or something. Okay, so vamos marcar has this meaning but doesn't mean that exactly. Okay, because if you bump into an acquaintance and you start talking but you're in a hurry, you need to go somewhere else, it's rude to just finish the conversation and saying I have to go, bye. It's not rude, but it's not very friendly either. Okay, so if you say, oh, it was great seeing you, but I have to go, instead of saying that, you say, oh, vamos marcar. And the person will understand that you need to go your own way, that you're willing to meet the person again, but you're not engaged. Okay, so you are not having your calendar and making an appointment, anything. No, you're just saying, okay, I have to go, but I would like to meet you again soon, but I don't know when. Okay, so it's very polite and it's not a commitment. Okay, vamos marcar. You just say that to be friendly. Okay, and if you want to say a very final goodbye, you say adeus. Okay, adeus is when you are not sure or you're more or less sure that you are not going to see the person again. It can be used in the sense of farewell forever. Okay, but it can also be used in daily life interactions. It's not very common, but you can say adeus if you want to, even if you're meeting the person sometime later. Okay, and here you have all these expressions to say goodbye in Portuguese, and you also have ways of asking how are you? Como vai? It is very important to know some expressions in order not to repeat the same phrase over and over again. Okay, you can say como vai. It's totally correct, but you may want to be a little more creative, okay, to have a little more variety in your ways of asking the person how the person is doing. So if you bump into someone, you can say quanto tempo, and the meaning is, oh, long time no see. Quanto tempo. And you can also say que bom te ver. I am happy to see you. Que bom te ver. Also possible, como estão as coisas? How are things? Okay, so if you meet someone, you can say any of these phrases to be friendly. And you may want to ask, tudo bem? Everything all right? Or tudo bom, which is the same thing, but you change a letter, okay? Tudo bom, everything is all right. Or even como vai? And then you answer tudo bem, tudo bom, whatever you prefer. And then you say thank you. But pay attention because a man says thank you by saying obrigado. And a woman says thank you by saying obrigada. Okay? Well, you can also ask como vai and add e a família, o trabalho. Okay? Como vai a família? How is your family doing? Como vai o trabalho? How are things at work? Why do we do that? Because como vai is very general, but you may want to show the person that you care about him or her, so you ask a little specifically, how is your family? It is not considered indiscreet or that you're invading the personal space of the person if you ask about the family. Of course, if you're talking with an acquaintance or a work colleague, okay? If you're talking to someone in your family, it's normal to ask about the family, okay? But if you talk to someone that in English, you may not ask, how is your family doing? In Portuguese, we do that, okay? So if you do not know very well the person, you may ask how the family is doing. It's a way of showing that you care. It doesn't mean that you do want to know how are things in the family, and the person also is not obliged to give a very personal response, okay? So if someone asks you, how is your family doing? You can just say fine and move on if you do not want to give any personal information, okay? It's not necessary to give a very intimate response, okay? You do not have to say what are the issues in your family right now. Don't worry about it, okay? So, como vai a família? And you ask, bem, okay? Fine. And you are being polite and, well, you're giving information, not very revealing, but you're being polite. And asking someone in Brazil about how are things at work, it's polite, but people do not ask that very often because, well, let's be sincere, most of the people do not enjoy their job, okay? So if they are at a party making small talk, they will not want to talk about their 9-to-5 job, okay? So if you are really passionate about what you do, well, you may want to talk about your work, but people do not suppose that people want to do that, okay? So you can talk about the job, but it's not very entertaining, okay? So if you start talking about your job, the person may find it a little boring. So if you are in your spare time, you do not talk about your job normally, okay? I tell you this because, well, in the English mentality, it's different, okay? People, well, they do not find it necessarily boring to talk about their jobs, but in the Brazilian mentality, we try to, well, not bring the work into the personal life because it's boring, okay? So after that, you have the question, como vai indo? It's the same thing as como vai, okay? But a little longer. Como vai indo? How is it going? Would be the literal translation in English, but, well, you see, literal doesn't work every time. So you have tudo bem, obrigado. This is a way to answer everything is fine, thank you, if you are a man. If you are a woman, you say tudo bem, obrigada. Okay? And also possible, como vai? Bem, obrigado, bem, obrigada. Then you add e você. Okay? And você is you, but it's an informal you. Okay? So you use você in Brazil very generally, okay? Almost everyone will be você. So people that you know well and even people that you do not know at all. you tend to use você to talk with people, okay? But if you are in a formal situation, so you may want to use o senhor instead of e você. O senhor is also you in English, but in Brazilian Portuguese, it's a very formal form of address. You use that to talk with a man that you do not know well, or if the situation is really formal. So you use o senhor formally, e a senhora also formally when talking to a woman, okay? But as I told you, generally in Brazil, we use você very, very often, okay? So this is what we say. You can ask como vai and give the shortest answer, bem. And this is okay, but you may want to, well, be a little more creative. So you're going to say tudo ótimo, everything is great. Se melhorar, estraga. It doesn't get any better than this. Actually, what you're saying in Portuguese, if it gets better, it will get worse, okay? So in the meaning that it cannot be better, okay? So this is what we think in Portuguese. In English, you just say it doesn't get better than that. And you can also answer normal, okay? Normal is a way of saying that things aren't great, okay? But you are not saying that, well, things are really bad, okay? So normal is very neutral. So you say normal, indo, tocando em frente. This is a little more informal, and what you say here, you're moving forward, okay? You're not being specific. Moving forward, tocando em frente. And you can say indo, né? Né is a way of, well, being a little more polite, okay? So you say, well, I'm doing all right, okay? But I'm not very sure. So this né has this meaning here, okay? It's a very hard word to translate into English. But if you say indo, well, you're being more sure than if you're saying indo, né? So you even yourself, you are doubting about your life right now, okay? So you can also say naquelas. Naquelas is also very informal, so things aren't great. Mais pra lá do que pra cá. This is a very Brazilian phrase, beautiful phrase. Mais pra lá do que pra cá. And there is no translation in English. Estou muito ocupado. I am very busy. You say that if you are a man. Estou muito ocupada. You say that if you are a woman. And if you are not doing well because you have some health issues, you say estou doente. I am ill. And you say that if you are a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. You may want to say I am not ill, but I am a little under the weather. So you say that if you are a man. Estou meio adoentado. And a woman says, estou meio adoentada. And if you're tired and you are a man, you say, estou cansado. If you are a woman, you say, estou cansada. And here are all these expressions for you, so with the translation. And, well, let's see the expressions that are really informal, but very common in Brazil, and you should be able to at least acknowledge them, even if you do not use them. So you can say, Oizinho, and even adeusinho. This ending inho is the diminutive in Portuguese. And inho can mean a short thing, a little thing, okay? So, for instance, uma coisa, a thing, uma coisinha is a tiny thing, okay? So you can use it literally to, well, say that it is a small object. But this ending inho can be used to, well, virtually any word in Portuguese because we love this ending inho, okay? We use it to things that cannot be little, like hello. You say hello, hello is hello. There is no tiny hello. But in Portuguese, there is. You say Oizinho, or you say Adeusinho, okay? And they are informal and they are a little cutesy, okay? So if it doesn't agree well with your personality, you do not have to use them, okay? But you may hear it because people, when they want to be polite, they may say Oizinho, Adeusinho. And you may also hear salve, salve as a greeting. Also, Saudações. Saudações is a little formal, but people can use it in informal situations too. And also, Saravá, very informal and very Brazilian too. And then you have vamos que vamos. I am pronouncing the way that we pronounce it when we talk informally. The words are vamos que vamos, but nobody would express it this way. We would say vamos que vamos, okay? And this is a way of saying in Brazil, we are, well, moving forward, okay? We are loaded with energy and motivation. So vamos que vamos, okay? So it's a way of trying to, well, be positive about the way you're going, okay? Vamos que vamos. And you can also say bola pra frente, okay? The ball goes forward, if you translate it literally, which is why we do not translate it, is a Brazilian expression to say that you're looking positive, okay, over the future. Bola pra frente, you are motivated. Vamos que vamos, bola pra frente. Both are very informal. You can also say, por hoje é só. That's it for today. And you can say, deu minha hora. My time is up. If you want, you can say valeu. Valeu is slang, okay? So it's a way of saying goodbye. Valeu. Also, you can say falou. Falou is also a very informal way of saying goodbye, is slang, okay? You can also say vou vazar, slang for I'm off, okay? And vou nessa, also I'm off, goodbye in a Brazilian slang. And you can say fui. Fui is also slang to say goodbye. And when you say fui, you say I went. So you see me here, but I'm already gone, okay? You can also say tamo junto. Tamo junto é nós. And both expressions, tamo junto é nós, they are slang and they are used normally among young men. Okay, so women wouldn't say tamo junto é nós normally. Okay, it's more common between men. And then you can say bora. Bora is slang, but it's very, very common in Brazil, and it's a way of saying let's go. But I am going, you can say let's go together, or I'm going. Bora. Okay? Partiu is also a way of saying goodbye in Brazilian slang. Okay? Well, to ask what is up, you have many, many ways of doing that informally in Brazil. You can say tudo certo, everything is alright. Tudo certinho, as I told you, we love this ending inho. Certo is right. Certinho is, well, the same thing, but it's more nicer, it's friendlier, okay? Tudo certo. And a little more, well, friendlier will be tudo certinho. You can say tudo jóia, tudo joinha. The same thing happens here, okay? And you can ask tudo em cima, or even tudo nos trinques, okay? And also tudo na paz, tudo azul. So you see all these expressions, they begin with tudo. And you can answer short and simple, tudo. Fine, perfect, okay? We are very efficient here. But you can repeat the same expression that the person asked you. So if the person asks tudo certo, you may want to react by saying tudo certo. or you may use any of these expressions as the answer. So if someone asks you, tudo joinha, you may want to say, tudo na paz. This can be your response. Okay, so all of these expressions, you are asking everything is all right. Okay, and some of them are very literal. So you say, tudo na paz is everything in peace. And tudo azul is everything blue. And tudo azul has not the same meaning that it has in English. When you are blue, you are sad. But everything is blue, blue as this blue sky. So everything is, well, great. Okay? And you also have a way of asking what's up in Portuguese Brazilian slang, which is e aí. Okay, it's very short, only vowels here, so it sounds great. E aí. And this is how are you doing, but short. Okay, e aí. Opa. Another way of saying hello or how are you doing. Okay, fala aí is the same thing. You say hello and at the same time you're asking how the person is doing. You can say diz aí, another way of saying the same thing. And qual é? Okay, qual é is pronounced this way. It's slang and it's, well, normal. Okay, so you see very short expressions to ask how are you doing. Also, you can say tudo firmeza. Okay, but they are very, very informal expressions in Brazil. And if you are doing good, so you say tô de boa, slang, or even sussa, also slang. Okay, I am, well, really great. Okay, and you may want to say tô de boa na lagoa, which is slang to say, well, I am happy as a clam. Okay, so you say I feel great at the lake. This is what this phrase is telling you. I am great by the lake. In English, it sounds good, okay? But in Portuguese, we say that because it sounds good. Tô de boa na lagoa. It sounds like a poem, okay? This is very, very informal in Brazil. You may also want to say tô suave na nave. Okay, so I'm really chilling in my spaceship. That's the literal meaning of it, but nobody thinks about it literally. Okay, you just use it as a formula. Tô suave na nave. And you can say tranquilo feito grilo. I am calm as a cricket. Tranquilo feito grilo. Okay? And you may want to know some slang in Brazil to talk to someone. Okay, so in English, depending on the region, you will say mate, bro, dude, or whatever. In Brazil, we also have this kind of expressions. So you have cara. Cara is very general, very common in Brazilian Portuguese. It's slang, but everybody uses this word. Well, almost everybody. Cara. Okay, cara is when you talk to someone and you're saying bro. Okay, so you're calling this person, but you're not calling the person. Okay, you're just using this word normally. Okay, so cara. Okay, you also want to say meu is another slang expression to say bro, dude. Okay, also possible mano. Okay, so both of them are more general in Brazil. Mano is a little more region specific. You say that a lot in São Paulo, for instance. And brother is what you say in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, and there they pronounce it brother. Okay, it's brother, so you may think that. Okay, and also possible is to say parceiro or even parça. Okay, and you may want to, well, all these expressions, you will use them when talking to a man. Okay, some of them can be used when you talk to a woman, but normally when you talk to a man. Okay, and you're calling him bro. Okay, and if men talk about women, they may use the word mina. Okay, mina is a girl. Okay, it's like chick in English. Okay, it's not offensive, But women among them, they do not use mina to refer to other women. Okay, men, when they talk about girls, they do use mina. And you also have migo, miga, which is short for amigo, amiga. People use that a lot in Brazilian slang too. So instead of saying friend, you say migo. Instead of saying friend, girlfriend, you say miga. Okay? Well, so if you talk to a group of people, you have many names to say, something like guys. Okay? So in slang, you can say galera. It's very common in Brazilian Portuguese. You talk to a group of people, your people, okay? People that you like, your friends, family, whatever, you say galera. It's not disrespectful, but it's slang. And you can use pessoal. Pessoal is informal, it's not slang, and it's also a group of people that you feel close to. You can say turma, the same thing, churma, which is a variation of turma, and also moçada, okay, like young people. You may say rapaziada, also young people, gente, people, and minha gente, my people. You can say povo, also people, and meu povo, my people, okay? Gente boa, good people, okay? And even gente fina, also good people. Okay, so all of them are informal. Galera is more slang, but all the others, you can use them when addressing a group of people that you feel close to, okay, your friends normally. But they are not adequate if you are at a business meeting, okay? So you don't go to a business meeting and say, oi, rapaziada. That's not adequate, okay? Do not do that. And then you can say oi, sumido, oi, sumida. And these expressions, they are slang and they are very, very specific. So if you are a guy and you broke up with a girl and after some time you want to get in touch again with her, you may send a text message that begins with oi, sumida when addressing a girl, oi, sumido when addressing a boy or a man. Okay, and this is what you say to an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend when you try to get together again or you want to be in the person's life again. Okay, so it's a little like flirting, but not exactly. Okay, so this is very, very common in Brazil. And then you have all these expressions here for you, and we will finish with beijo. Okay, how do we greet people in Brazil? In Brazil, it's very common to give a kiss, beijo. Okay, so if you are a man greeting a woman, if you are a woman greeting a woman, you may give an air kiss to this person. If it's someone that you know, okay, maybe you are at a party and you get introduced to someone. So you give 1, 2, 3 kisses. And also if you meet a friend, you will give 1, 2, 3 kisses. And generally people that you know well. Okay, so kisses, air kisses, they are very common in Brazil. 1, 2, 3 kisses depending on the region that you're in. Okay, so for instance, in São Paulo, it's normally 1 kiss. Okay, we're a little stingy with kisses. We don't like to give kisses to everyone, just 1. In other regions, people may give 2 or even 3 kisses. Okay. If you do not know what to do, just wait for the person to, greet you. Okay, but normally if you are going to give an air kiss, you should start with the right and then go to the left. So if you do the opposite, you may kiss the person in the mouth. Okay, so beijo is the normal way of greeting people. You, if you're writing a text message or an email to a friend, you may want to say goodbye by saying beijinho. And you see one more time this ending here is a little kiss. If you want to give also a kiss that it's a little bigger than beijinho, then you say uma beijoca. Okay? And uma bitoca is also the same thing. They are all synonyms for kisses because we like kissing people, okay? So you may even want to say beijão. This is a big kiss, okay? And you also may want to say abraço. Okay, so if you write an email, if you're a guy writing an email to another guy friend, you may want to say goodbye by saying abraço. Okay, and abraço is not so close as beijo. Okay, and when you're greeting people in real life, well, you give hugs only to people that you do know well, and so friends and family. So people that you do not know well, you normally don't give a hug because it's too much contact. Okay, so you're really in the personal space of someone. So if you do not know the person, you do not hug this person. You normally give air kisses, and if you are a man, you shake hands, and that's everything. Okay, so hug is a little intimate. It can depend. Okay, people can give hugs to everyone, but normally hugs are only for really people that you have a close relationship to. Okay, so all these expressions, they can be used to finish an email too, if you want to. Or you can say, when you're talking to the person, beijo. Okay, instead of giving a kiss, you blow a kiss and you finish the conversation. Okay, so after that, I believe that you well learned a lot. You can keep on practicing because you can. Here you have in the material. And well, if you like this video, please like it. And if you want to watch more videos like this, then subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoyed learning all this Portuguese, and I hope you practice all this new information in real life. Obrigada e tchau!